I'm Julia Eshekpour.
And I'm Kevin Hollage.
We work together under the duo named Tenet.
This show is a collection of works we've made since we started collaborating.
And this show is called Wall Begins to Know Itself. We don't fully move chronologically, but the two pieces of the entrance of the show do happen to show the very beginning of Tenet.
We met in school at Macalester College, where we both went and studied fine art. Right after college, we moved to Mexico City because it presented opportunities that I don't think we would have necessarily had right out of school in New York.
We want to create objects that feel familiar, but then there's something a little off or strange or disorienting about them that maybe remind you of two different things at one time. I think our name also reflects that duality.
Wall Begins to Know Itself is a flat work that is pretty sculptural, that hangs off the wall but sits on the floor. And there's a wood seat with baluster legs that to us kind of represents a chair that's not really functional. There's sort of like a poetic, disorienting feeling to that work that we thought kind of encapsulated the show.
It was really important in considering this show to make sure that even though pieces that hang on the wall feel like they're referencing the environment that they're in, we, with the permission of the gallery, asked to cut out a slice of the molding so that it could actually rest flat against the wall, which felt really important to think of it as a continuation, that this is like another wall. Maybe it's like a subway wall or a bathroom wall that you are seeing through the space here, and they're kind of one and the same.
A lot of the works sort of have this play between personal and private life, which is a concept we're interested in exploring. The public and the private kind of collapse and become one, where you're like always kind of living publicly, but because there's so many people and it's so dense, it's also very private at the same time. So it's really exploring all of these elements of architecture. My grandpa was an artist, and so I was interested in design and architecture growing up.
I grew up in New York City, and I feel that I've always been pretty aware of how my environment made me feel. Noticing the differences growing up in a really dense urban environment. We just really do have like a pretty intimate relationship with architecture in the city. When you walk into the show, you'll see 4 pieces hanging on the wall. They're all called frames. Thinking of each of these pieces as like a snapshot moment of an incident or a piece of architecture in passing. They're all like small insights or moments. You'll see something that looks like a building facade, and then on a closer inspection, you'll begin to see floorboards and dividers. And if you look from below, you'll see that they mimic walls and doors. When you modify an apartment, maybe you knock down a wall, there's still always traces of what was there before you.
The border of Chinatown on the Lower East Side, it's such a historically significant neighborhood. The architecture of the neighborhood was designed to accommodate an influx of immigrants at the turn of the 20th century. It's also a contentious area around like real estate development, pricing, new renovations, trying to push out old tenants. The buildings themselves have remained the same, but the people that own them are trying to change them to become more appealing. It's interesting and a little absurd to try to change those things because the bones of the building remain the same, which is to say that they are buildings that were designed for the urban poor. The ways in which they have been renovated are interesting, poetic, and a little absurd to us, and that's where a lot of the beginning of our work was coming out of.
So this piece that looks like a door, obviously it's not the scale of a door, is called Bridge. When you look Within the staircase, there is a little model that is inspired by a favorite artist of ours, Sia Armajani, his whole kind of body of work and way of thinking. And so we were really interested in this idea of like an assemblage of architectural forms that, when put into conversation together, create new meanings and new ways of thinking.
On the one end, we're making wall works that are sort of evenly sculptural as they are paintings in a sense. The other aspect of our work is like we make three-dimensional sculptures that use a lot of just general building materials. A good example of that work is ledge, which sits in the middle of the gallery. In the beginning of this show, we were going on long walks through different parts of our neighborhood and taking photos of interesting aberrations. And what it's supposed to sort of encapsulate is this in-between state where it sort of looks like a building, but it also looks like a ledge. And it's almost a human scale, but it's also a little short.
There's kind of this support element with baluster, and it's filled with raw sugar. I've also been really interested in this element of humor or human folly. This really strong intent between, wanting to start afresh and, make something completely new and never being able to escape that sense of history.
We're really trying to situate like a certain degree of criticality or like consciousness around how we experience space.
It's important to recognize or make sense of such a chaotic environment, such a multi-layered environment.